Hare Krishna, devotees, welcome to our Bhagavatam class. Today's shloka is the third shloka of the first chapter of Canto number 1. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam
Shuka mukhadamrita drava samyutam
Shukamukhadamrutadrava samyutam
Pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam
Pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam
Muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha.
Muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha.
Word for word meaning, translation, and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Nigama,
Nigama,
the Vedic literatures.
the Vedic literatures.
Kalpataroho,
Kalpataroho,
the desire tree.
the desire tree.
Galitam,
Galitam,
fully matured.
fully matured.
Phalam,
Phalam,
fruit.
fruit.
Shuka,
Shuka,
Srila Shukadeva Goswami,
Srila Shukadeva Goswami,
the original speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam.
the original speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam,
Mukhat,
Mukhat,
from the lips of.
from the lips of
Amrita,
Amrita,
nectar.
nectar,
Drava,
Drava,
semi-solid and soft,
semi-solid and soft,
and therefore easily swallowable.
and therefore easily swallowable.
Samyutam,
Samyutam,
perfect in all respects.
perfect in all respects.
Pibata,
Pibata,
do relish it.
do relish it.
Bhagavatam,
Bhagavatam,
the book dealing in the science of the eternal relationship with the Lord.
the book dealing in the science of the eternal relation with the Lord.
Rasam,
Rasam,
juice,
juice,
that which is relishable.
that which is relishable.
Alayam,
Alayam,
until liberation,
until liberation,
or even in a liberated condition.
or even in a liberated condition.
Muhuhu,
Muhuhu,
always.
always.
Aho,
Aho,
O,
O,
rasikaha,
rasikaha,
those who are full in the knowledge of mellows.
those who are full in the knowledge of mellows.
Bhuvi,
Bhuvi,
on the earth.
on the earth.
Bhavukaha,
Bhavukaha,
expert and thoughtful.
expert and thoughtful.
Translation. O expert and thoughtful men,
O expert and thoughtful men,
relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures.
the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become
Therefore, this fruit has become
even more tasteful.
even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice
Although its nectarian juice
was already relishable for all,
was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
So, we will read the purport written by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And then we're going to read the transcript of a couple of classes if we have time, where Prabhupada spoke about this particular shloka in 1971 in London. So let's look at the purport. The shloka, as we said, the first shloka in the first canto of the first chapter, the very first shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam, talks about the fact that we all have a sambandha with the Supreme Lord. The second shloka that we covered last week, it talked about the fact that because we have a relationship and we are aware of that relationship, if we are aware of that relationship, then we will act on that relationship in the form of our expressions of love Therefore, the second shloka represented abhidheya. So the first one was sambandha, relationship. Abhidheya, now that you know you have a relationship with the Supreme Lord, how are you going to express that relationship to Lord Krishna? That is called abhidheya. This particular shloka represents the final outcome in the path of bhakti. So this shloka represents prayojana. Prayojana means the end result of understanding that you have a relationship with Krishna, expressing your love and desire for Krishna ends up with Krishna prema. And Krishna prema is very relishable. But there is a far deeper significance behind this particular shloka. And Prabhupada has written a most wonderful purport here, which we can look at. In the two previous shlokas, it has been definitely proved that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the sublime literature which surpasses all other Vedic scriptures due to its transcendental qualities. It is transcendental to all mundane activities and mundane knowledge. In this shloka, it is stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is not only a superior literature, but it is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering all of this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Srimad Bhagavatam. So what is Prabhupada establishing in the shloka here is that this is the topmost of all Vedic scriptures, because unlike other scriptures that discuss about a whole lot of material things, because this particular literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, is in essence the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, it is not surprising that this is the topmost literature, because it is the most transcendental. It describes the qualities of the Lord. It describes the Lord's pastimes with his devotees. And therefore, this literature is considered to be the topmost compared to any other Vedic literature. And therefore, this particular Srimad Bhagavatam is referred to as a fruit. What kind of fruit? The most ripe, delicious, sweet tasting fruit. So anytime a tree grows, yes, we may make use of different parts of the tree. But what is that one thing that we relish most? It is the fruit that the tree provides us. So similarly, if all of the Vedic scriptures were considered to represent a tree, and the branches and the leaves and the flowers, then the fruit of that Vedic tree would be Srimad Bhagavatam. Hence, Prabhupada is writing, in other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. There's nothing beyond this. Considering all of this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. So when we approach the scriptures, we cannot be in a challenging mood. We need patience because we may not understand everything that we read or hear. We need to be submissive. It means that our heart should be open to listening to pastimes about the Supreme Lord. And then Prabhupada writes, with great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in this very first paragraph, Prabhupada is explaining to you and me what mood should we be in when we listen to Srimad Bhagavatam. Respect and attention. And if there is respect and attention, then the message and the lessons will sink in. And then once the message and the lesson sinks in, then we are able to practically apply it in our daily life. So the Vedas are compared to the desire tree because they contain all things knowable by man. They deal with mundane necessities as well as spiritual realization. So the vast chunk of the Vedas are actually relating to karma kanda, which means if you want to enjoy something, there are certain steps that you have to undertake to enjoy the benefit of that particular desire that you have. Therefore, they deal with mundane necessities as well as spiritual realization. But the portion of the Vedas that deal with spiritual realization is far less than the portion that addresses all of our material desires. The Vedas contain regulative principles of knowledge covering social, political, religious, economic, military, medicinal, chemical, physical, and metaphysical subject matter. And all that may be necessary to keep the body and soul together. So the Vedas are a comprehensive compilation of knowledge that addresses every aspect of material life as well as aspects concerning philosophy and spirituality. Anything and everything to do with keeping this body and soul together is covered in the Vedic scriptures. Above and beyond all this are specific directions for spiritual realization. If you want to go beyond politics and religion and economics and other aspects, for a small portion of the population that may be interested in self-realization and God realization, there are aspects in the Vedas that give you the path that you need to follow. So regulative knowledge involves a gradual raising of the living entity to the spiritual platform, and the highest spiritual realization is knowledge that the personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all spiritual tastes or rasas. So that is why this is considered the ripened fruit of all Vedic scriptures, because this particular book talks about the Supreme Lord and his pastimes. So this is called rasa. Now Prabhupada is going to explain what this word rasa means. There's no good translation for it in English. But Prabhupada is going to use the next paragraph to talk about what these rasas really mean. What does rasa mean? How can we relate to this word rasa? Every living entity, beginning from Brahma, the firstborn living being within the material world, down to the insignificant ant, desires to relish some sort of taste derived from sense perceptions. These sensual pleasures are technically called rasas. So rasa, you could say, is our desire for enjoyment. Such rasas are of different varieties. But then rasas also take different colors and hues based on the guna that is influencing you. In the revealed scriptures, the following 12 varieties of rasas are enumerated. Raudra, anger; Adbhuta, wonder; Shringara, conjugal love; Hasya, comedy; Veera, chivalry; Daya, mercy; Dasya, servitorship; Sakhya, fraternity; Bhayanaka, horror; Bhibhatsa, shock; Shanta, neutrality; and Vatsalya, parenthood. Normally, we would have heard only of the 5 primary rasas. But the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu talks about these 12 rasas. So even rasas that go over onto the negative side are also rasas. The sum total of all these rasas is called affection or love. So Prabhupada is saying You take this 12 rasas together and it forms what is called affection or love. Primarily, such signs of love are manifested in adoration, service, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. So love is actually manifested in the 5 primary rasas. And when these 5 are absent, love is present indirectly in anger, wonder, comedy, chivalry, fear, shock, and so on. So if there is absence of love, then these rasas are still there, but they take on a different hue. You can't call it love. It's an absence of love. And therefore it has anger, wonder, comedy, chivalry, fear, shock, and so on. For example, when a man is in love with a woman, the rasa is called conjugal love. But when such love affairs are disturbed, there may be wonder, anger, shock, or even horror. Sometimes love affairs between 2 persons culminate in ghastly murder scenes. Such rasas are displayed between man and between animal and animal. There is no possibility of an exchange or rasa between a man and an animal or between a man and any other species of living beings within the material world, which means rasas are enjoyed or experienced within that same species. The rasas are exchanged between members of the same species. But as far as the spirit souls are concerned, they are one qualitatively with the Supreme Lord. So yes, because your body type is different, whether you're in a bird's body or an animal's body or an insect's body or a human body, you will experience the rasas as per the body type. But ultimately, the singular rasa that all of us are looking for is that permanent love, which can only be had with Krishna. So the spirit soul is qualitatively one with Krishna. Therefore, the rasas were originally exchanged between the spiritual living being and the spiritual whole, the Supreme Personality of God. So where did all this rasa come from? The original rasa is our relationship with the Supreme Lord. The spiritual exchange or rasa is fully exhibited in spiritual existence between living beings and the Supreme Lord. So the original rasa emanates in that relationship that you have, the sambandha and abhidheya principles that are experienced between the Jivatma and Parma. So that's the original rasa. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is therefore described in the Shruti mantras, Vedic hymns, as the fountainhead of all rasas. Fountainhead means he is the origin of all rasas. When one associates with the Supreme Lord and exchanges one's constitutional rasa with the Lord, then the living being is actually happy. So if all rasas originate in the Supreme Lord, then happiness also originates in our relationship with the Supreme Lord. So without the Supreme Lord, one cannot have happiness in one's life. These Shruti mantras indicate that every living being has its constitutional position, which is endowed with a particular type of rasa to be exchanged with the personality of Godhead. If you recall, many times we have discussed that the Prabhupada has always said all of us have one particular rasa that predominates in our relationship with the Supreme Lord. But you will only discover it when you're liberated. You will not discover it now. So Prabhupada writes, in the liberated condition only, this primary rasa is experienced in full. So one of those 5 primary rasas is in which you have eternally a relationship with the Lord. Whether as a servant or a friend or a parent or in a conjugal relationship, all of us have that one primary rasa that is predominating. But you will discover it when you're liberated. In the material existence, the rasa is experienced in the perverted form, which is temporary. And thus the rasas of the material world are exhibited in the material form of raudra, anger, and so on. So that original rasa gets contaminated because of association with the three gunas, or under the influence of the three gunas. And when you come under the influence of the three gunas, then those rasas take a very different form. Anger, horror, fear, etc. There's no love there. Therefore, one who attains full knowledge of these different rasas, which are the basic principles of activities, can understand the false representations of the original rasas, which are reflected in the material world. So, if you recall chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita, where the shloka begins with Urdhva Moolam Adashakam, Ashwattam Prahuravyayam. So the Lord talks about how this entire material world is like an upside down banyan tree that is reflected on the water, and the real tree is on the banks of that water body. So similarly, the real rasas are on the banks, but we are looking at the reflection of that rasa in the water and thinking that that is real. So Prabhupada is simply explaining that those who understand these primary rasas, they will realize that all other rasas that they are experiencing in the material world is not the real rasa. So therefore, Prabhupada writes, the learned scholar seeks to relish the real rasa in the spiritual form. Once you realize the real thing is somewhere else, then you are not going to waste your time anymore with rasas of the mundane kind. And the first fault of that human being, Prabhupada talks about. In the beginning, he desires to become one with the Supreme. Thus, less intelligent transcendentalists cannot go beyond this conception of becoming one with the spirit whole without knowing of the different rasas. So, what happens for those who want to merge into the Supreme Lord? Where is the rasa? There's no relationship. There is no give and take. Once you've merged with the Supreme Lord, what's left for you to do? You are one with the Supreme Lord. There's nothing you can do. So, but when you understand that you can have an eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, you don't want to merge with the Lord. You just want to go to the spiritual world and resume your relationship with Him there. So in this shloka, it is definitely stated that spiritual rasa, which is relished even in the liberated stage, can be experienced in the literature of Srimad Bhagavatam due to its being the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge. Hence, Srila Vedavyas is saying, when you hear this submissively and attentively, you will experience that original rasa. You will get a taste of it simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. By submissively hearing this transcendental literature, one can attain the full pleasure of his heart's desire. But one must be very careful to hear the message from the right source. So, even though information about that original rasa is available in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is saying we need to hear it from the right source. And now Prabhupada is going to talk about the Parampara system. It was brought by Narada Muni from the spiritual world and given to his disciple Srila Vyasadeva. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, the knowledge, was handed over from spiritual master to disciple. Narada Muni to Vyasadeva. Then what did Vyasadeva do? The latter in turn delivered the message to his son, Srila Shukadev Goswami. And what did Srila Shukadev Goswami do? And Srila Shukadev Goswami delivered the message to Maharaj Parikshit just 7 days before the king's death. Srila Shukadev Goswami was a liberated soul from his very birth. He was liberated even in the womb of his mother. And he did not undergo any sort of spiritual training after his birth. It's an unusual birth that Shukadev Goswami has. Once he's out of his mother's womb, he just gets up and walks off into the forest. Because he doesn't need any more training. Normally, training is given by your mother and father. But because he was a liberated soul, he just came out and walked off. So Prabhupada is saying, at birth, no one is qualified, neither in the mundane nor in the spiritual sense, which means after you're born, we have to work towards our way towards spirituality. So it's rare that somebody is born as a liberated person. That means if they're born a liberated person, they have come here for a purpose. They did not come because of their past karma. They simply came because the Lord sent them. But Sri Shukadev Goswami, due to his being a perfectly liberated soul, did not have to undergo an evolutionary process for spiritual realization. So typically what happens for an ordinary jivatma, for a conditioned soul, we have to go through the process. Sometimes that process may involve many millions of births before we can actually take to spirituality. But that did not apply to Shukadev Goswami. Now, why is Prabhupada talking about Shukadev Goswami? Because in the Sloka itself, Shukadev Goswami is mentioned that he has tasted the Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, we should only hear the Bhagavatam from someone who has tasted it and relished it. Because then your enjoyment increases, your pleasure, the relishing principle increases. Yet, despite his being a completely liberated person, situated in the transcendental position above the three material modes, which means Shukadev Goswami was not under the influence of Sattva Guna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna. He was fully liberated. So because he was not under the influence of these three gunas, he was attracted to this transcendental rasa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is adored by liberated souls who sing Vedic hymns. The Supreme Lord's pastimes are more attractive to liberated souls than to mundane people. So which means Prabhupada is explaining to us here that not everybody is going to sit and listen to Srimad Bhagavatam. Because not everybody has the taste for it. Nor do they have the desire. He is of necessity not impersonal because it is not possible to carry on transcendental rasa with the person. So Prabhupada is going back to the point that he made a little earlier where he said that the mistake that the impersonalists do is that because they don't understand these rasas that you can enjoy with the Lord, they want to simply merge into the Lord. But rasa itself indicates that the Lord is a separate personality and we are a separate personality. And therefore that relationship cannot be broken. So Prabhupada is establishing the word rasa indicates relationship. A relationship can only be between two separate entities. If you merge with the Supreme Lord, you are no longer two separate entities. So only if you are two individual entities can there actually be a relationship, and therefore rasa can only be there if there is a relationship. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are narrated And the narration is systematically depicted by Srila Shukadeva Goswami. Thus, the subject matter is appealing to all classes of persons, including those who seek liberation and those who seek to become one with the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada is explaining here, even those who want moksha are attracted to Srimad Bhagavatam. Even those who want to merge with the Supreme Lord, they are also attracted by Srimad Bhagavatam. So now, why should we hear this from someone who has already relished the Srimad Bhagavatam? Prabhupada is going to explain in this paragraph. In Sanskrit, the parrot is also known as Shukha. Shukadev Goswami, the Acharya say, he is actually Leela Shukha. A parrot serving Srimati Radharani in the spiritual world. So it's actually Radharani's messenger who has come to talk the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. When a ripened fruit is cut by the red beaks of such birds, its sweet flavor is enhanced. So if a parrot tastes a fruit, that fruit acquires a much sweeter flavor. The flavor of that particular fruit is enhanced. Similarly, the Vedic fruit which is mature and ripe in knowledge is spoken through the lips of Srila Shukadeva Goswami, who is compared to the parrot, not for his ability to recite the Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from his learned father, but for his ability to present the work in a manner that would appeal to all classes of men. Here, Prabhupada is clarifying before we misinterpret the word Shukha and parrot. Prabhupada is explaining he's not called a parrot because he has memorized everything by heart. It's because he's able to present the pastimes of the Lord in such a way that anybody can relish the scripture. Doesn't matter what your stature is in society, whether you're learned or not, it does not matter. That's how expertly Shukadev Goswami has presented the pastimes of the Lord in Srimad Bhagavatam. The subject matter is so presented through the lips of Srila Shukadev Goswami that any sincere listener that hears submissively can at once relish transcendental tastes which are distinct from the perverted tastes of the material world. Many of you would have heard the same pastimes from Srimad Bhagavatam. Yet each time you hear it, you are able to relish it more and more and more. One never gets tired or fatigued of hearing the same pastimes of the Lord again and again and again, because each time you hear it, you will relish something new. So there is only so many times one can hear a popular song. There is only so many times that one can read a bestseller book. After some time, your taste changes and you move on to something else. That is not the case with Srimad Bhagavatam. The more you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the more you want to hear it again and again and again. Therefore, that desire to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is explaining, that is a transcendental desire. That desire does not come from the material world. The ripened fruit is not dropped all of a sudden from the highest planet of Krishna Loka. Rather, it has come down carefully through the chain of disciplic succession without change of disturbance. So, this particular analogy is used by many preachers of Srimad Bhagavatam. Which is, if we want to get a ripe fruit from a tree, how would we get it? If the tree is at a very great height, most of us may use a stick or a stone and try to dislodge the fruit until it falls to the ground and we can pick it up. Prabhupada is explaining that's not how the Srimad Bhagavatam has dropped. A sensible person will approach the tree with a ladder, and people who have already climbed the tree can pluck the fruit and hand it down, 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 down until the last person gets it. This is the parampara system. So Prabhupada is explaining, rather it has come down carefully through the chain of disciplic succession without change or disturbance. What happens if you knock a fruit of the tree with a stick or a stone? One, it may get damaged. Two, you may think it is damaged. Why should I eat it? Therefore, very carefully, Krishna has given this knowledge in a methodical fashion. He first reveals this knowledge to Brahma. From Brahma, it goes to Narada Muni. Narada Muni to Vyasadeva. From Vyasadeva to Shukadev Goswami. From Shukadev Goswami, all the sages have heard it along with Parikshit Maharaj. Foolish people who are not in the transcendental disciplic succession commit great blunders by trying to understand the highest transcendental rasa, known as the rasa dance, without following in the footsteps of Shukadev Goswami, who presents this fruit very carefully by stages of transcendental realization. Which means, we already read this in the purport to the other two shlokas as well, and the preface and the introduction that Prabhupada has written to Srimad Bhagavatam, that one should not jump to the 10th canto. Why? Because your consciousness should become purer and purer and purer until you are actually ready to hear the 10th canto. You may ask then, why in ISKCON do we talk about the pastimes of the Lord in the 10th canto? When it is presented from the lips of a pure devotee, it is relishable from an acharya like Srila Prabhupada. But we don't touch the rasa dance because not everybody is ready for it. So all other pastimes of the Lord, we relish. One should be intelligent enough to know the position of Srimad Bhagavatam by considering personalities like Shukadev Goswami, who deals with the subject so carefully. If great acharyas approach this particular fruit with such great care, then you and I should be equally careful on how we approach the Srimad Bhagavatam. This process of disciplic succession of the Bhagavata school suggests that in the future also, Srimad Bhagavatam has to be understood from a person who is factually a representative of Srila Shukadev Goswami. Means they have come in the parampara. All scriptures must be learned in parampara system only, from Guru only. A professional man who makes a business out of reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam illegally is certainly not a representative of Shukadev Goswami. Such a man's business is only to earn his livelihood. Therefore, one should refrain from hearing the lectures of such professional men. Such men usually go to the most confidential part of the literature without undergoing the gradual process of understanding this grave subject. They usually plunge into the subject matter of the rasa dance, which is misunderstood by the foolish class of men. Some of them take this to be immoral, while others try to cover it up by their own stupid interpretations. They have no desire to follow in the footsteps of Srila Shukadev Goswami. One should conclude, therefore, that the serious student of the rasa should receive the message of Bhagavatam in the chain of disciplic succession from Srila Shukadev Goswami, who describes the Bhagavatam from its very beginning and not whimsically to satisfy the mundaner who has very little knowledge in transcendental science. Srimad Bhagavatam is so carefully presented that a sincere and serious person can at once enjoy the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge simply by drinking the nectarian juice through the mouth of Shukadeva Goswami or his bona fide representative. So there is also additional explanation of this particular fruit. There's ripened fruit of this Vedic scripture. This fruit is such a lovely fruit. It doesn't have skin. It doesn't have a seed. You can only taste the rasa. And therefore, this particular shloka, the verse goes as follows. Shukhamukhad amritadrava samyutam. Straight from the lips of Shukadev Goswami, it's coming as juice to you. Which means you don't have to worry about removing the skin, removing the seeds. Shukadev Goswami has already done that. He has transcendentally processed this literature so that it is available to you as wonderful juice. And therefore the word pibata is used. Pibata means to enjoy, to relish, to drink. So this Bhagavatam is meant to be drunk, but drunk through the years. Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. So this is a beautiful purport written by Prabhupada. I was actually reading the transcript of 2 lectures given by Prabhupada in 1971 in London. I'm going to read specific sections of it because Prabhupada has covered some extra information that is very valuable for us to understand. So Prabhupada says that Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of Vedic literature. Nigama kalpataru. Kalpataru. We have no experience of kalpataru. The kalpataru is a desire tree in the spiritual world, which doesn't exist in the material world. We cannot even imagine what it is like. So Prabhupada is saying, we have no experience of kalpataru within this material world. But in the spiritual world, there is kalpataru. Kalpa means desire and taru means tree. Here, you can get from a mango tree, mango, not any other fruit. But in Kalpataru, in the spiritual world, the description of Kalpataru is there in the Brahma Samhita. Chintamani prakara sadma sukalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu surabhira bhipalayantam lakshmi sahasra shata sambrama sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So Prabhupada is citing a shloka from Brahma Samhita. This Brahma Samhita was composed and spoken by Lord Brahma after he is revealed knowledge by Lord Vishnu. Before he starts his process of secondary creation, this Brahma Samhita is composed. We don't have all of the shlokas of the Brahma Samhita. Somewhere along in our Vedic culture and history, it got lost. Only the 5th chapter is there. That was located by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he traveled through the south. So this is Krishna's planet. That planet is made of touchstone. We do not know whether anyone has got experience of this touchstone, but there is a touchstone which you touch on iron, it becomes gold. Touchstone. So in the spiritual world, there are also houses like these trees, like this. There are cows and the gopis, Krishna. So their description is given in the Brahma Samhita. We should not think that we have imagined something artistic and created a Krishna. No, it is completely supported by Vedic literature, Brahma Samhita. Prabhupada is saying, we shouldn't read the scriptures and thinking somebody somewhere just imagined all these things and they've put it in writing form. Prabhupada is saying no. The fact that Krishna resides in the spiritual world with all the gopis and Lakshmis is supported by Lord Brahma's praise of the Lord in Brahma Samhita. So in the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated about Krishna's place, original place. This is also Krishna's place, meaning even the material world is Krishna's place. Everything belongs to Krishna. But here, because we are forgetful of Krishna, therefore we are accepting this place as material. Actually, everything is spiritual, because if you see everything with a spiritual eye, everything is spiritual. Even this material planet is spiritual. You can see the vibhuti of the Lord everywhere. Just like the king, he possesses all places of the country. Similarly, Krishna is the proprietor. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Bhoktaram Yajnatapasam, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam, Gyatva Mam Shantim Rachati. This is the last shloka of chapter 5. If anyone wants happiness, Shanti, peace, then he must know these three things. What is that? That Krishna is the enjoyer of everything. Bhoktaram Yajnatapasam. Only Krishna enjoys. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. You can perform yajna, you can perform austerities, penances, but the result should be enjoyed by Krishna. That is Krishna consciousness. When you come to that consciousness that I'm working hard and earning so much money, everyone is thinking that I must enjoy. Why others? In the sense that we are always thinking, why should others enjoy? Why even I cannot enjoy? That is the materialistic way of thinking. But we are trying to change the consciousness. Krishna consciousness movement means that you earn as much as you like, but the enjoyer should be Krishna, not you. So you can be a billionaire, Prabhupada is saying. It doesn't matter how much you earn. If we understand that Krishna is the only enjoyer, not you. That is Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not a very difficult thing to understand. We have to change the account, that's all. Instead of thinking everything belongs to me, you have to think that everything belongs to Krishna. That's what Prabhupada means by we have to change the account, that's all. Everyone, the karmis, they are working so hard day and night. The ultimate aim is that he will enjoy. He'll satisfy his senses. Therefore, he is working so hard. The Bhagavatam therefore says, Nayam deho deha bhajam loke, kashtan kaman arhate vidbhujam ye. This is in the 5th canto, 5th chapter, the first shloka. Simply for sense gratification, we should not work so hard, because these things are done by even hogs and dogs. This is the translation of the shloka from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Krishna consciousness movement means that we have to change the account, not for sense gratification, because the real proprietor is Krishna. When I think I am proprietor, I am enjoyer, that is illusion. That is illusion. Janasya mohoyam aham mameti. So in the Chintamani Dhama, Krishna is aboard, everything is there, but the account is different. That is the spiritual world. Here the account is different. Is everything there, but everyone is trying to enjoy for himself? There is competition. I am enjoyer, you are enjoyer, therefore there is competition. Individually, man to man, family to family, to society, nation to nation, there is always competition. But this competition will stop as soon as there is Krishna consciousness, that I am not the proprietor. We are not the proprietor. Krishna is the proprietor. That's all. That is the means of Shanti. Bhoktaram Yajnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Rachati. There can only be peace if everybody agrees nothing belongs to us. Everything belongs to Krishna. He is the proprietor because he's created everything, including you. These three things, if we understand properly, that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, Bhokta. Second, Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. He is the friend of all Jivatmas, not just special people. All living beings, he is the friend. Krishna, or the Supreme Lord, is situated in everyone's heart as friend. Ishvaras sarva bhutanam hriddesh arjuna tishtati. That's in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Sloka 61. That is stated in the Upanishads. Two birds are sitting on one tree as a friend. One bird is eating the fruit of the tree, and the other friend is simply witnessing. He is friend. He is supreme friend, not so-called friend. He is not a friend who will abandon you if you don't satisfy. Actually, he's our supreme friend. He's always trying to get us back to home, back to Godhead. Not only he's sitting within our hearts, but he's descending as Krishna. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanar bhavati bharata abhyuthana madharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. I was listening to some lecture a few weeks back, and I remember the preacher said, many preachers use this term. Krishna gives, 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 and forgives. But what is the Jivatma doing? We get, and forget. Who do we forget? We forget Krishna. But who is giving all the time? Krishna. Even though we forget him, Krishna forgives you. But even though Krishna is giving you so many things, we forget him. That is our fundamental sin, offense. He comes and canvasses. What is that canvassing? Sarva dharmam parityajya mamekam sharanam raja. Why are you engaged in so many so-called occupations? Krishna is telling Arjuna, you simply surrender unto me. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksheshyami masuchaha. But we are so engulfed in matter that we cannot take the advice of Krishna. Therefore, Krishna comes again as a devotee, Lord Chaitanya. Lord Krishna said that you surrender unto me. Same Krishna came as devotee of Lord Krishna. Bhaktakyam bhaktavataram namami bhakta shaktikam. The Lord came with his 5 primary expansions. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam bhakta rupa swarupakam bhaktavataram bhaktakyam namami bhakta shaktikam. So the Lord comes in his original form as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He comes as his immediate expansion as Lord Nityananda. He comes in his Purusha avatar as Advaita Acharya. He comes as a Shakti principle in the form of Gadadhar Pandit. And he also comes as a devotee of the Lord. He brings that devotee principle as well in Srivas Pandit. So the Lord is surrounded by these 5 principles. When he comes in that is why this mantra is called the Panchatattva mantra. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam. Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam. Bhakta Avataram. Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. So this was Lord Chaitanya's prayer. So Krishna is always trying. He's coming himself as the Lord, the Supreme Lord. He's coming as a devotee. So Prabhupada is saying, when he comes as the Supreme Lord, we are ignoring. So then the Lord has to come in disguise as a devotee to just drag us along. Coax us, canvas us. He's sending his representative simply to canvas, to come to Chintamani Prakarasadma Shukalpa Vriksha, where there is eternal happiness, desire trees. Therefore, the Vedic literature. What is the purpose of Vedic literature? Veda means knowledge. Vetti Veda Vido Jnanam. Anything from which you get knowledge, that is called Veda. So from the Vedas, we have to acquire the supreme knowledge. Therefore, it is called Vedanta. Vedanta means we have got so many different types of knowledge, but what is that ultimate knowledge? That is called Vedanta. Ultimate knowledge means to inquire about the Supreme. We are getting knowledge, we are inquiring. What is the newspaper today? What has happened? That is also knowledge. But that is not ultimate knowledge. Ultimate knowledge is Krishna. Therefore, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa sarvair ahmeva vedyah. Vedanta means to know the supreme absolute truth. That is ultimate knowledge. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishtaha mattas smritir jnanam apohanam cha Vedaischa sarvair ahmeva vedyah Vedanta krid veda videva chaham. People are after so-called Vedantists, but they do not know Krishna. So-called Vedantists. Krishna himself is saying in the Bhagavad Gita in the 15th shloka of the 15th chapter that I am the culmination of all Vedas. If you're studying the Vedas, ultimately you'll discover who I am. But one who is actually Vedantist, he knows Krishna. So Prabhupada is saying there are a lot of people who may claim that they have studied the Vedic scriptures and they call themselves Vedantists. But if they have not understood that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, then they are actually not Vedantists. So any devotee of Krishna is a Vedantist because he knows Krishna's position. He may not have studied the Vedic scriptures, but the very fact that he knows that Krishna is the Supreme Lord makes him a Vedantist. Therefore, some time ago, some of these Vaishnavas, they gave me this title, Bhakti Vedanta. Bhakti Vedanta means ultimate understanding of Vedanta is Bhakti. Not to study the Vedas and think the Lord has no form, not to become impersonalist. So here it is stated, Nigamakalpator Galitam Phalam. All the Vedas, they are summarized in the Vedanta Sutra. You have heard the name of Vedanta Sutra. So Srimad Bhagavatam is an explanation of the Vedanta Sutra. Therefore, from the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, the first aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra is there, Janmadyasya yataha. That's how Srimad Bhagavatam begins. Of course, before that, there is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. In the Vedanta Sutra, the first quote is Athato Brahma Jijnasa. Now we have to inquire about Brahman, the absolute truth. That is the business of a human being. Because in other life than the human form of body, we have simply passed our time in the matter of bodily necessities in life. Ahara Nidra Bhaya Maithunam. Ahara Nidra Bhaya Maithunam cha. Samanyametat Pashubhir Naranam. This is from the Hitopadesha. The bodily necessities of life. The animals, they have also bodily necessities of life. Ahara, eating. Nidra, sleeping. And Bhaya, fearing or defending. And Maithuna, sexual intercourse. So the cats and dogs, they have got all these functions. And the human being has also all the same functions. It may be a little polished, but the function is the same. Then what is that extra business of this human form of life? If you're simply engaged in these four principles of life, eating, sleeping, sex life, and defending or fearing, then what is the difference between a man and a dog? There's no difference. The only difference is Athato Brahma Jijnasa. A man can come here in this temple and he can inquire about Krishna or the absolute truth. That is the difference. So this Krishna consciousness movement means we are giving chance to everyone to come and inquire about Brahman. Athato Brahma Jijnasa. Or in other words, the whole activities of this Krishna consciousness movement is Vedanta life. Vedanta life. Anyone who is inquiring about Krishna, inquiring about the absolute truth. Now, there are different stages of inquiring about the absolute truth. That is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam madvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. The absolute truth is one. But according to our understanding, some are accepting the absolute truth as impersonal Brahman. Some of them are accepting the absolute truth as the localized Paramatma. And some of them are understanding the absolute truth as Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna or Vishnu. So this Krishna consciousness movement means to understand the absolute truth as the ultimate issue. That means to understand the absolute truth as a Supreme Person. Prabhupada is saying there are various levels of realization. Even in God realization, there is Brahman realization, then there is Paramatma realization, and then there is Bhagavan realization, which is the highest and topmost. Bhagavan realization is only possible if you're practicing bhakti. If you're practicing anything else, it may lead you to Brahman realization only. Maximum, you may get Paramatma realization. But if you have even a little bit of bhakti, then that gives you Bhagavan realization, which is the highest form of realization. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is describing the absolute truth in the beginning. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is how Srimad Bhagavatam begins. Vasudeva means Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. He appeared as the son of Vasudeva. But spiritually, unless one becomes on the position of Vasudeva, nobody can understand Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the name of Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness, not contaminated goodness. Here in this material world, there are three types of statuses: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sattva gun, Rajagun, Tamogun. So ignorance and passion, they are simply material. The symptom of ignorance and passion is greediness and lust. Above this greediness and lust, there is another platform, which is the Vedanta platform. To understand everything clearly, that is called goodness. Now, pure goodness means one has to transcend even this material platform of goodness, because in the material platform of goodness, there is a possibility of being contaminated by the other two qualities. So the Shuddha, the Sattva gun can at times become contaminated by Rajagun and Tamogun. That's what Prabhupada is saying here. But only if you are practicing Krishna consciousness can you actually transcend even the Sattva gun. So Prabhupada is saying sometimes it becomes mixed up. This material type of goodness is just like a pure Brahmana. Satyam, Shamo, Dhamas, Titiksha. With all the good qualities, truthfulness, controlling the senses, controlling the mind, full of knowledge, tolerance, and knowledge. Knowledge means about the Supreme. These are Brahmanical qualifications. So Lord Krishna talks about the Brahmanas' qualifications in Bhagavad Gita. But sometimes these Brahmanical qualifications also become contaminated by the other two qualities, passion and ignorance. It has been experienced. At the present stage also, we see that many persons who are coming from the Brahmanical family, but they have been contaminated by the other two qualities, passion and ignorance. So there is possibility. Possibility being in the sense that even if you think you are in Sattva Gun, there is a possibility that you can get contaminated by the other two gunas. In the material goodness, there is possibility of being attacked with the other two qualities and thereby fall down. But when you transcend the material platform of goodness and come to this transcendental platform of goodness, then you cannot fall down. That is called Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. That Sattva, that existence of pure goodness is called Vasudeva. So now we have understood one more meaning behind the word Vasudeva. Pure goodness. In that pure transcendental platform of goodness, you can understand Vasudeva. So only if you are in Vasudeva state can you understand Vasudeva. That means in that status of life, Vasudeva is born. Because Vasudeva is already there. You simply realize him. Vasudeva, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam, Hriddesh Arjuna Tishtati. Vasudeva is already there within your heart. But you simply realize it by placing yourself in the pure consciousness, pure platform. So this can be done simply by our discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada is saying, don't worry. You read, you study, you hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, and you can get to that Vasudeva platform. And then realize Vasudeva, because Vasudeva is already there in your heart as Paramatma. Therefore, it is said here, Nigama Kalpator Galitam Phalam Idam. It is the mature fruit of Vedic knowledge. And Shuka Mukhad Amrita Drava Samyutam. This Srimad Bhagavatam was written by Vyasadeva, and it was spoken for the first time by Shukadev Goswami, his son. So Vyasadeva, in another lecture, which we probably will not have time to go over, the other transcript, which is again a beautiful transcript. Prabhupada writes that Vyasadeva said, "My dear son, I have written about the pastimes of the Lord. Now you go preach. You go speak it." And this is what every spiritual master instructs their student. If a spiritual master has written the books, the disciple's duty is to study those books and go preach. So Vyasadeva was saying, I have taken the effort to write about the Supreme Lord. Now you go speak, spread this message. He wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of his spiritual master Narada. And he taught his son, beloved son, Shukadeva Goswami, that you preach. I am writing, you preach. That is the duty of the student. The spiritual master writes, and it is the duty of the disciple to preach. And if the student is also as pure as the spiritual master, then it becomes very nice. Shuka mukhad amrita drava samyatam. Another explanation of this verse is that any fruit ripened in the tree, it is already very nice, very sweet. If you take an unripe fruit from the tree and keep at your home, it also ripens, but it is not so tasteful. If it is ripened in the tree and you take it, then it is very tasteful. I think you've got this experience. Again, if that fruit is cut by the lips or the beaks of the parrot, which is called shuka, it becomes still more tasteful. Similarly, this fruit, the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge, Srimad Bhagavatam, is already very tasteful because it is the ripened fruit, but it has been tasted by the lips of Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, it is still more tasteful. Drava samyutam. Drava means it's now converted into juice form for you. Processing is very easy. Therefore, it is recommended, Pibata Bhagavatam. Now this ripened fruit is there in a liquid form, in a rasa. Just taste it, just drink it. Pibata Bhagavatam rasam. When we eat something, we taste its rasa, the juice. Rasoham apsu kaunteya, Krishna says in chapter 7, Sloka number 8. That is, I am the taste of water. Everyone, when he's thirsty, he wants, give me water, because there is taste in the water, which will immediately quench your thirst. So we enjoy everything because there is some taste. That is called rasa. Anything we do it because we want that taste. Just like a man, he's working very hard day and night. What for? For maintaining his family, his children, and wife. So unless there is some rasa or some taste, he cannot work so hard day and night. There is some flavor in maintaining the family with hard labor. And sometimes we see, therefore, one who has no family affection, he does not work so hard. So if you don't have any attachment, if you are not in grahastha life, then you really don't have to work very hard. You can be quite lazy. He doesn't care to work. This is practical. Therefore, in Vedic civilization, the family life is recommended unless one will become confused, hopeless because he has no taste for the family life. Family life is recommended because if you remain a bachelor or a spinster, you don't have to work hard. Therefore, you become lazy and you will slip into the mode of tamogun. So actually in Vedic culture, marriage is encouraged. So everything, there is some rasa, taste. Without that taste, nobody can live. Now here it is recommended, Srimad Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. Here is the taste which you can enjoy up to the end of your life or up to the point of liberation. Because life is meant for getting liberated from this painful material existence. That is life. Everyone is trying to get out of this painful situation. That is the struggle for existence. But they do not know what is the ultimate life. Free from all painful activities. That is called liberation. The whole Vedic civilization is based on this point. How to get liberated and enjoy eternal happiness. Ramante yogino nante satyanande chidatmani Iti Rama Pade Nasau Param Brahma Bhidiyate. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 9, Shloka 29. Rama, Rama. This word comes from Ramana. Ramadhatu, enjoyment. Just like here in this material world, they are also engaged in Ramana. But that is sex life, that's all. That is sex life. That is also Ramana. But there is another Ramana, that is Rama. If you take the shelter of Rama, that is real happiness. Ramante yogina anante. Those who are yogis. Yogis means transcendentalists. Those who are aspiring after spiritual perfection, they are called yogis. So the preliminary yoga system that is practiced generally, Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, that is preliminary. Nobody gets perfection even in the preliminary yoga system. And what to speak of further progress? So Prabhupada is saying this Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, they are all preliminary practices that ultimately will lead to bhakti. But even in that preliminary practice, you can't achieve perfection. But in Bhakti Yoga, if you start, you can achieve perfection in one lifetime. So the Bhakti Yogi, those who are engaged in this Bhakti Yoga system, Mam Chayo Vyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate. That is yogi, this yoga system. Mam Chayo Vyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate. Sagunan Samataityaitan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. This is the 26th shloka of the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna is saying, if you take to this Bhakti Yoga system, what is that Bhakti Yoga system? Now we're coming to Canto 7, Chapter 5, Shloka 23 by Prahlad Maharaj. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishno Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedanam. So if you take to this Bhakti Yoga system, Avyabhicharena. Avyabhicharena means without any deviation. Strictly on rigid principles. Mam chayaf vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. One who is engaged in the service of the Lord by accepting the Bhakti Yoga system, sagunan samatityaityan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. He immediately becomes transcendental to the three material qualities, namely the sattva gun, rajagun, and tamagun. And that is called mukti. Mukti does not mean that when you become liberated, you will have gotten so many heads or so many legs. No, mukti means swarupena vyavasthitihi. To be situated in one's original constitutional position, that is called mukti. That is Krishna consciousness. Swarupena vyavasthitihi. So this verse recommends that Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. Rasamalayam, alayam, laya. Laya means to merge. We are also merged into this material world, just like your body. My body is material. But I am soul, you are soul. I am merged into this material. Because I am spirit, although I am merged, I am not getting happiness. Just like if you are put into the Atlantic Ocean, you merge. But because you are not the living entity of the water, you cannot be happy. Even though one may enjoy swimming in the ocean or surfing in the ocean, you cannot stay inside the ocean for too long because your body was not made for it. Therefore, you may experience some amount of happiness temporarily. Ultimately, you will not be happy if you were to be given a permanent position in the ocean, but in a human body. So Prabhupada is saying that is also merging there. You have to merge into the spiritual existence. Then you will be happy. That is Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. So we'll stop here.